This isn't a country that I feel like I recognize anymore. It feels like it's not the country that I grew up in and have known my entire life. And I know I'm not alone in this. This country has changed significantly, more than just the new buildings that have gone up. I feel like the very philosophy, the ethos of what it is to be an American has changed so fundamentally that America itself doesn't exist as it once did. There used to be a kind of beauty to being an American. We felt pride in being American, and though that pride may have been misplaced and the privileges that we've had have been abused, I think there is still a great beauty in America when I grew up, and it doesn't seem to be there anymore. The world has gotten dark, the country has gotten darker, and the sense of hope that I remember growing up with has disappeared. The things that we allow in our country to happen in our name is really a great shame on us. The earliest part of my life was spent on a military base, and I remember growing up around people of all colors. And I never really understood or experienced racism while living on a base as a child. It wasn't until I left, and you really get to see it firsthand as it was kind of normal, as the kind of undertones were palpable in society. But now the sentiment of ethno-nationalism has entered the conversation, and it's spreading in the youngest minds of America, who you think would be the most progressive. You think they look at the world around them with the social media and everything at their fingertips, and look at the new world and all the benefits that it has. But no, we're turning centuries back to a completely different paradigm that we left behind long ago.
What's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
To be xenophobic, yes. Nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
Which, do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
What is the dominant culture?
Based on European and Christian values and identity. That is the dominant culture.
White Christian.
It's rooted in European identity.
White. So your argument is that
has been the dominant culture.
Just to be clear.
And we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
Your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity and Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity of America...
For the majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
Well, actually, no. I think actually the identity of America has been, for better or for worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah. Maybe since the 1960s. Even then, even we had this idea of a melting pot. Literally means assimilation too. It means melting. It means you're assimilating to the dominant culture. Is that not what melting means?
No, it doesn't mean.
And now instead we're saying there's something wrong with xenophobia.
Culture. No, I mean, look, I got to be honest with you. You and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. It's a choice. And I think what you're expressing, though, is really what the Trump movement at its heart is about. And I think that's problematic.
I disagree. I don't think Trump's anywhere close to being a Christian nationalist. That's ridiculous. Trump's basically a Democrat from 15 years ago when it comes to social issues.
So you don't think that he's conservative enough for you?
Oh, definitely. Nowhere close. No.
He's not xenophobic enough for you?
No, he's trying to import a bunch of H-1Bs. Are you kidding?
Right. Oh, so you want to get them out too? Yeah. No, I think you're making my argument for me.
I understand that the concept of American identity is far more complex than a lot of people really give it credit for. And this is a specter of something from the past that used to be more in the shadows. But with this administration and kind of the culture that it's spawned, we're seeing these things start to come to light again. And the worst thing is that it's coming from the younger generation. First off, the fundamental premise of saying that this is a white European country, I feel like is inherently flawed. There was no cohesiveness back in the day when it was just Europeans, pretty much in the 1800s and early 1900s, to establish themselves here in America. If you were Italian, if you were Irish, if you were Polish, if you were German, you weren't really accepted. You wouldn't just come here and be accepted. That's not how this worked. Believe it or not, European people are incredibly diverse in their cultures and histories, and they didn't like each other for a long time. There was a lot of conflict. And while yes, the philosophical foundations of America are deeply rooted in European philosophy, to say that this is a white Christian nation doesn't make any sense. And there might have been an argument for that at some point, but that argument stopped making sense a long time ago, probably before this woman's grandparents were even alive. The fact is, America has been a very diverse place for a very long time, and you can't argue that. This, if anything else, is just more of a condemnation of the American education system. Thinking that the melting pot means assimilation makes absolutely no sense to any rational thinker. To say that we already have a dominant identity in America and it's white Christian really doesn't make any sense. I mean, there are so many different sects of Christianity here, none of which are Orthodox, so there's no way it can be a Christian country. These people are only Christian in name, but not in values. But like I said, it's a great shame. And this isn't the country that I remember. This isn't the country that I grew up with. And when I have conversations with people my age, and we all grew up in the same time, none of us remember this kind of sentiment being around. You know, it was something from the past, something that no one thought like that anymore. It just didn't make sense in the world that we were in. But somehow it's crept back. And it has to be confronted, because that's not what America is. That's not the America that we want to go back to. If you're saying that a better time was before the 1960s, then we know what you're trying to say. And I think the vast majority of Americans would wholeheartedly reject that position. At least I hope they would. Because in fact, the very idea of Christianity is all about embracing the stranger. That's what it's about. It's not about closing yourself off from the rest of the world and saying us, and everyone stay out. It's us. It's not what it's about. A true Christian country would be the most diverse country on the planet, to be completely honest, because the Christian religion is all about acceptance, as it should be. But these people have lost themselves in a kind of victim identity of a past that they've completely made up. Like I said, this idea of just a white identity, it never really existed. This is something modern. Before the mid-20th century, Europeans were always at war with each other, constantly. I mean, more wars and battles have happened in Europe throughout the history than almost any other civilization on the planet. It's what we do. I think China had more than Europe, but I mean, it's in us. Even those rivalries to this day still stand. Between England and France, still that rivalry's there, and they've been at each other's throats forever. But no, it doesn't make sense. But it's becoming more popular now, and it makes me feel like this isn't the country that I grew up in. It's become far worse in so many ways. And for it to be acceptable now, for jackboots who work for the government to kick down the doors of just normal working people, to check their papers and kick them out of the country if they're illegal, without any due process. Even though our Constitution guarantees the right to due process to any person in the jurisdiction of the United States, not citizen. It's a shame. It's a shame what our country has become. It's a shame what we've allowed to happen. And in general, I feel this moves us into a very dark place that we've worked very hard, that generations have worked very hard to move away from. And I think we are all poorer for it. And this kind of mentality has to be challenged and cannot be allowed to thrive in this new world that we are creating. So, anyway, thank you for stopping by. This is Large Man Abroad. Like and subscribe, become a member. But have a good week.